All right, this is number 2 or section 2 for scientific inquiry. So, drawing conclusions. Now that you've gathered and interpreted your data, you can draw conclusions about your hypothesis. A conclusion is a summary of what you have learned from an experiment. In drawing your conclusion, you should ask yourself whether the data supports the hypothesis. You also need to consider whether you collected enough data and whether anything happened during the experiment that might have affected the results. You should address these questions in your summary of the experiment. After reviewing the data, you decide that the evidence supports your original hypothesis. You conclude that cricket chirping does increase with temperature. It's no wonder that you have trouble sleeping on those warm summer nights. So inquiry leads to inquiry. Okay, so scientific inquiry usually doesn't end once a set of experiments is done. Often one scientific inquiry leads to another one. You have found that crickets do indeed chirp more as the temperatures rise. But does this apply to all kinds of crickets everywhere? And what happens at lower temperatures? These new questions can lead to new hypotheses and new experiments. So here he's asking, cricket chirping does increase with temperature. I wonder if temperature affects the rate of bird chirps too. So here's our nature of inquiry, okay? We pose a question, we've looked at we've observed our surroundings, we've made inferences, and we start asking questions. From those questions, we can make a hypothesis. The hypothesis might lead us to ask more questions, or if we think that we have a testable hypothesis, we can then design an experiment. Once we design an experiment, we are able to collect data, and then we can start interpreting the data with graphs and analyzing that data. Okay, now when we analyze that data, it could actually lead us to go back and say we need to ask more questions and kind of start over again. Or it can help us draw conclusions, and once we draw conclusions, then you need to communicate that. And we communicated that through the science fair. Scientists will communicate in science journals, through podcasts, and different ways to communicate their results. And once you get your results, it may lead to more questions and help you design more experiments for deeper understanding. So the nature of inquiry. In this cricket experiment, you decided to test your hypothesis in one particular way. Your friend may do it another way. Furthermore, different questions may require different approaches to finding answers. For example, a scientist studying the moon may rely on observations rather than controlled experiments to test a hypothesis. Scientific inquiry is a process with many paths, not a rigid sequence of steps. Often a surprising observation or accidental discovery leads into inquiry. New information springs up, then a scientist's path takes a different turn. Work may go forward or even backwards when testing a hunch or fitting a new idea with existing ones. So how do we communicate this to other people? An important part of the scientific inquiry is communicating results. Communicating is the sharing of ideas and experimental findings with others through writing and speaking. Scientists share their ideas in many ways. For example, they give talks at scientific meetings, exchange information on the internet, or publish articles in scientific journals. Sometimes a scientific inquiry can be part of a huge project with many scientists working together around the world. On such projects, scientists may share their ideas and findings on a regular basis. When scientists communicate their research, they describe their procedures in full detail so that others can repeat their experiments. Okay, so one of the main questions we were asking ourselves, or objectives for this lesson, is what's the difference between a scientific theory and a scientific law? So as a body of knowledge, science is building up cautiously. Scientists do not accept a new hypothesis after just one successful experiment. Rather, a hypothesis is tested repeatedly as many different scientists try to apply it to their own work. So scientific theories, sometimes a large set of related observations, can be connected by a single explanation. This can lead to the development of a scientific theory. A scientific theory is a well-tested explanation for a wide range of observations or experimental results. For example, according to the atomic theory, all substances are composed of tiny particles called atoms. The atomic theory helps to explain many observations, such as why ice melts at a particular temperature and why iron nails rust. Scientists accept a theory only when there is a large body of evidence that can support it. However, future testing can still prove an accepted theory to be incorrect. If that happens, scientists may modify the theory or discard it altogether. This illustrates the ever-growing and exciting nature of science knowledge. So a scientific theory is based on observations, and in figure 13, it's an observation of sunsets and sunrises. Ancient people theorized that the sun revolved around the earth. Okay, that was the theory. Now new evidence led scientists to abandon that ancient theory, and today scientists know that Earth, along with the other planets in the solar system, revolve around the sun. Okay, so a scientific law. Scientific laws. Have you ever heard someone say, what goes up must come down? When scientists repeatedly observe the same results in specific circumstances, they may arrive at a scientific law. A scientific law is a statement that describes what scientists expect to happen every time under a particular set of conditions. Unlike a theory, a scientific law describes an observed pattern in nature without attempting to explain it. You can think of a scientific law as a rule of nature. For example, the law of gravity states that all objects in the universe attract each other. This law has been verified over and over again. Okay, your homework for this section is section 2. Please go to Infinite Campus. You can click on the link to fill out the form and submit it. All right, I will see you next time. Bye.